Hey, we're here and we're back on the podcast with Mr. John McDougall from McDougallInteractive.com. They provide SEO services that actually work. They have a 27-year track record of successful content marketing that will help you avoid failed campaigns. Now, Mr. John McDougall, he's been around for a while and he's witnessed firsthand the evolution of digital marketing. So we're going to find out about these challenges in this industry, maybe hear about his client work and just about this whole digital marketing landscape, SEO, social media, paid advertising, content creating. There's all these opportunities, even in this day and age, for growing our business. There's emerging trends. So we're going to find out from the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. John. So Mr. John McDougall, glad to see you.
Likewise, glad to be here.
And glad to have you. And so now that we have those pleasantries out of the way, what are you all about? What's your current focus and passion? What just gets you so excited?
So other than jazz guitar, chasing Google algorithms, and I was selling websites in 95 at my father's ad agency. They said, go sell websites, whatever those are, in 95. And then 96, took a SEO class. My brother signed us up. I think it was Robin Nobles, this probably one of the first online SEO classes ever, so I like that, that it's, constantly evolving. It's a little bit technical, but it's partially creative. So, if you're building a website or doing SEO, you're doing content, which could have music involved. It could have infographics, books. So all that creative stuff is what drives me, but with a little spice of technical thrown in, because you can't really be an SEO person without, dealing with load time and broken links and fixing that stuff,
Oh, yeah. And, you're bringing to attention the similarities between computers and music, right? When you're a musician, you're like, well, there is a certain amount of like improvising and the kind of the artsy creativity, but then there's also the mechanics and the practice and the form. And it's great when there's something in our life that kind of ticks all those different boxes, right? You're fixing up a client's website and you say, well, hey, here's a low-hanging fruit. Here's the technical SEO to be done, the load time and the meta tags and the broken links and the backlinks and all that cool stuff. And then there's also, well, you say, well, here's this larger strategy, and then I can kind of use my brain those other ways. It's great when I'm sure if they looked at like the MRI of your brain, different kind of regions would be lighting up. So to help us get an understanding of what it is that you do as far as these SEO services, how do you stand out? Because you say that SEO is a great way for many businesses to stand out, but then how do you and McDougall Interactive stand out compared to all these other SEO agencies?
So one of the things that we focus on is thing I call talk marketing, and that's sort of like my latest book. Not really to pitch it, the book, just to explain the mechanism of it. So talk marketing, my thinking, using that phrase, and I bought talkmarketing.com. We have some little courses up there. The idea is that over the last 30 years now, 30 years and coming in May, we've been doing SEO, and, early on, it's what people thought SEO was. You put keywords in certain places. You still do that. But if you only did that, you'd be dead in the water. And so, as time evolved, like by 2011, Google came out with Google Panda, and they started, catching people that were like stealing content or duplicating content. 2012, we started coming down on people that were doing easy articles or just, bad links of whatever kind, bad backlinks. So Penguin was like another nightmare, like, 2011, 2012, it was like chaos. To me, that's what really kicked off content marketing proper. It was like optional before that. But after that, if you wanted SEO, you couldn't just like, well, maybe we'll blog, So what makes us a little different is, we've been helping people with content, not just technical SEO or on-page SEO, but with good creative content for decades. And around 2008, we started podcasting specifically for SEO. My dad, after selling his agency, had a fine art gallery, and so I interviewed an artist with a podcast. and we put that on the site with the transcripts. And then I said, oh my God, imagine we get all, he worked with a lot of deceased, well, he sold a lot of deceased artist paintings, it's called Cape Ann Impressionism, Cape Ann Fine Art. It's basically American Impressionism of lesser known authors. But we're like, geez, we could really be onto something crazy here. Like, instead of just write some articles about like Cape Ann art, and as the agency, even though I'm, the son of the agency owner and I know something about fine art, still writing about it's not going to be quite the same. It's like talking to the artists themselves. So we thought, well, let's get the modern, the living version of the Cape Ann artists and interview them. Amazing content, and then over the years, we just started applying that to whether it's a solar company, a law firm, HVAC companies. Especially the law firms love it because it's thought leadership. Maybe some law firms don't even care about the SEO. They just want to be seen as a thought leader. So podcasts are great for that. So that's one thing that makes us, it's 100% unique, but the way that we call it talk marketing is kind of unique. And that we say, you don't need to have a podcast to be Joe Rogan or whoever, Pat Flynn, leading Timothy Ferris or whatever, Tim Ferriss. You don't need to have the hottest podcast to have your SEO go up and Google trust you more, from your podcast content. And now it's almost insane not to do it, because in a 10-minute podcast, you can get almost 1,500 words of transcribed text that Google will crawl and appreciate. But you're also getting multimedia that Google likes, including video, because like we're recording right now, right? So the webcam is capturing video. Every question can be turned into a short. The whole podcast can be a summary video. Is that the best documentary style video in the world? No, but it's totally acceptable. Everybody does it now. It's part of YouTube. Some YouTube channels are just like interviews and shorts from the interviews. So I call that talk marketing, and I think that, or I should say, we know that it works to make your SEO go up with the least amount of effort. So if you're a busy HVAC company owner, lawyer, and you're like, what the hell are you agency people doing, SEO people, like especially the low end SEO at like $500 a month to maybe even $3,000 a month, anything under $3,000 a month, you don't know what you're going to get, and you can almost guarantee at 500 or 1,000 a month for SEO, they probably just don't even know what they're doing. We've taken over for so many. We're just like, oh my God. Even some big companies, one was $12,000 a month. Half of it was for paid ads, where they were taking 4,500 and charging giving Google 1,500 a month and charging 4,500 to run 1,500 a month in paid ads. I thought that was criminal. That's a crazy ratio of ad spend, percent to get for the management fee. And then for $6,000 a month for SEO, in 9 months, they made one blog post that I used originality.ai and found was like AI content. So in 9 months at $6,000 a month, this SEO company was ripping off this HVAC company. So I took over and we developed like 150 pieces of content in the last year. So, for the same money, I mean, yeah, we then got, I don't know, $82.50 a month or something, but we're running their Google ads, doing all the lots of content. And when we're doing that content, yeah, sure, we're writing a blog post a week, and we have a writer that's good at writing about HVAC. That's fine. But then we're doing a podcast a week, and every podcast episode has the side effect of all the shorts and all the other content. So the business owners could either hire someone to do that for them or just learn to do it themselves. So a quick lesson on that would be, just get Riverside or get Squadcast and just hit the freaking record button, because we've been teaching people this stuff, and, $500 a month for like weekly group coaching. And we have this thing in Massachusetts. You can get $15,000 in free training through the Workforce Training Fund. So we teach a lot of people this stuff. And sometimes we're kind of shocked, like this company's doing their second year training with us, but the guy that did the first year, it's a 9-week program, twice a week for the $15K in free training. But I was kind of surprised that the guy that took the training didn't just start the podcast. Like, So a big lesson is like, just do it, um, the podcast thing with the video, right? Because
Right.
if you want your SEO to go up, just talking about it or hiring an agency to write some mediocre content, it's really not going to work now that, especially after ChatGPT came out a couple of years ago. It's chaotic. I mean, talk about struggles and SEO going through more growing pains. Oh, SEO is dead. I've heard that over the last 30 years so many times, but there have been moments whereas at our agency, we're like, oh crap, this is going to suck for a while. Like with Google Penguin, that was hard because we had easy article link building back then because nobody told you not to do that. So that was just a basic thing for small businesses. So then okay, now we got to do PR and we got to do higher end link, do more link bait and higher end link building. Okay, we got through that. And then something else comes. Now AI is like, oh crap, everybody like lemmings going off the cliff are, doing, a lot of people are doing just, they think, oh, I don't need an SEO code. I'm just going to push a button and blog posts will appear from ChatGPT and they sound pretty good, but they're not really that good. They're really just spun articles from, the internet that might even get shut down too if people, win lawsuits again, which are happening as we speak, right? Against the AI companies saying like, well, you shouldn't be, taking my content from McDougall Interactive blog or your, Robert's blog, like you shouldn't be stealing our content, mishmashing it and pumping it out and selling it as like the next latest article. Because, Google doesn't love straight up AI content like that. So podcasting and YouTube content will get the client talking, or you if you own the company, or if you're working with an agency, what better thing to give as a gift to your SEO company to say, hey, that's cool, you're writing a blog post a week, we're going to give you a podcast a week. We'll give you the audio and you turn it into videos and a podcast episode, weekly blog post with the transcript. And that high level thought leadership content, Google will recognize through their EEAT algorithm, experience, expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. That's not an SEO thing. That's a Google thing. They want to, they, especially in the days of AI, because that second E came out after ChatGPT for experience, because a robot doesn't have experience. So if you want to stand out from a robot, highlight that you have case studies, that you actually do SEO or HVAC installation or, personal injury law, whatever it is. If you're talking about it, especially if you're talking about, case studies, even if you don't use the actual person's name, you say in Gloucester, Massachusetts, we installed solar panels on John McDougall's roof, that's, it's hard to get any more actual experience oriented than that. Right. And then
Right.
if you're really giving good, helpful tips and information, people are going to like you more. They're going to stay longer on your website. So it's just too many reasons in my mind at this point not to take that to heart, and then you'll struggle less.
And that's what we want, right? You want to struggle less and succeed more, and that's quite a catch up, right? Of the past, basically, you caught us up on the past 30 years of the internet. Just that there's been this arms race since the beginning, right? Like the kids these days, they don't understand that there used to not be search engines and crawlers, right? It used to be just like indexes. It used to be you just submit
Yahoo
your
wasn't
site
a search engine at first. People think it was a search engine, but they got their results from Google. So if you went to Yahoo, you were searching basically you were looking at the index of the web, like a yellow pages, and then if those results failed, Google was feeding them, and then they woke up one day and were like, oh crap, we should have our own algorithm. They didn't pull that off too well, unfortunately.
But it seems like there's been it's been evolving more and more, right? It used to be like the search engines would say, hey, you give us your meta tags, and then they say, well, we'll figure it out for ourselves. And then there's like you say, every few years there's been some kind of like people were like overly reliant on the technical, and then you got slapped down, and then the Google gods said, well, hey, here's what we want the internet to turn into, right? If you're talking about solar panels on the roof and someone cranks out 500 AI articles, we want to, instead of rewarding that, we want to reward the person that's actually doing it. And I think you're bringing to light this idea that AI still sucks at storytelling, right? It can't really replace if you actually put the solar panels on Mr. John McDougall's roof in Massachusetts. And it seems like that's what people connect to anyway, right? If someone says, I'm looking to get solar panels on my roof, sure, maybe I want to get educated and want some facts and figures, but I want to know, like, are they competent? Have they done it? And
That's
are
right.
they like a real authority in this space? Are they a real business versus someone that's cranking out the content? And so to give us an understanding of the types of businesses that you help, right? Is there like a certain niche that you like to be in?
Yeah.
Or if someone says, hey, like as far as I want McDougall Interactive's help with my SEO, how does someone know that they're the right fit for you?
Yeah. So our biggest category is law firms. And I have a book, Content Marketing and SEO for Law Firms. And, that we love that category, especially personal injury. We wrote a book, Dog Bite Law. How geeky is that?
That's good.
We wrote a whole book for a law firm and got paid pretty well to do that because we were doing their SEO. But my first book was, content, web marketing on all cylinders, and that was for anyone. But after 30 years of doing this, I mean, about 20 years in, well, really about 2010, I got this client who paid me close to $1 million for an SEO and Google ad project, and I was like, wow, I like these lawyers. They pay really well. So we kind of shifted and started a blog for lawyer marketing. But then I just get referrals from all different industries. So we've had we worked with 20 banks. We created the best online only bank in the country. We worked with a bunch of colleges and schools. And then the last 5 years, now 10 years, we've done a ton with home improvement, including HVAC and solar and roofing. That's really fun in a way because banks and lawyers have compliance issues or they're sometimes uptight about the content. And so it's harder to get it out there. The HVAC guys are like, oh man, if it's close enough, get it done. Let's go, on to the next thing.
Yeah.
And they're knowledgeable about what they do. And, most of them can just talk on podcasts and videos. So lawyers and, law firm marketing is our hot category, but all those others, especially home improvement, are great. And again, the home improvement is just sort of easy and fun in a way because of that case study thing. That's one of the things. An HVAC company we work for, we wrote 230 case studies. And then recently we started podcasting the case studies because they would give us a bit of data and we would make up a story about it. But I don't know, lately we're doing roofing, HVAC, and solar. We're doing case studies generated from, hey, it's John Marr, and I'm here today with John McDougall. So John, what made you want to get solar panels? You could interview the client, or it could just be, John Marr, my right-hand man. He'll interview like Brian from Solaris, and he'll say, so Brian, tell us about Tesla solar panels. What's the difference between them and whatever? Or we've been trying to get we've trying to land Tesla as an interview. They said no, they're pretty intense to try and get with. But we interviewed Mitsubishi, LG, and Generac are examples of brands that we had our clients interview with us on the line. And those are like a whole nother level of podcast. So case studies for home improvement's been a cool thing we've been doing lately that I do really like. But to kind of stay focused, I'm building a second agency called Rainstar Digital for lawyers. We're just building the website now. So I've been doing that for, I probably had lawyers really in the 90s, but as SEO clients. But again, as a matter of how much emphasis is on there, we're just taking it to the 9th degree now. We're going even a whole step further and a whole separate agency just for legal marketing. So I think that's the issue now, is where AI makes it so like people can get marketing a little easier. Like if you're going to hire an agency, you probably should hire at this point a specialist agency, either in an industry like lawyers or banks or home improvement or even just HVAC, because you're going to know that space and the content is going to be really good because you know it. And all the little ins and outs of those different spaces. So that's
Well, Yeah,
where
and
to go.
these are some great insights, and I love your energy and your work ethic, and most of all, your specificity. How you're saying, well, if you're an HVAC company, go and find an SEO company that like specifically specializes in that, even down to the
Right.
point where you're so specific. You're like, we have a book about what to do if you're bitten by a dog, and so that seems to be the world that we live in, right? How there's,
Yeah,
I mean, there's
narrow it.
streaming. Yeah, you narrow it. There's streaming services. There's apps that we haven't even heard of because we can be that specific now. We can say, well, hey, I'm not going to just turn on NBC on TV and remember the days you mentioned the 90s a few times. Remember the
4,
days of
5, and
you
7.
turn on you turn on TV and you'd be like,
Yeah.
oh, this is what's on TV, and you would just watch that. Like we don't do that anymore, right? We
No.
seek out what we want, and there
Right.
used to be early internet. You'd be like, oh, there's a new website. I'll check out Shockwave Flash. Well, I wonder what's on there. And now we're like, we don't have time for that anymore, right?
Yeah.
We're not just gonna view a website just because it's there. Now we choose what we want, and so I love these insights that you say you should find a company that specializes in your space. And this talk marketing concept is also really great because that's always the problem, right? The paradox is, well, I want my content to reflect me and my company, but I just don't have time to do all this writing. So either I spend all my time writing or I outsource it and then someone else writes something that is not authentic. But hey, 10 minutes of podcasting. Well, then what do I talk about? Well, you do a case study. You talk about one of your satisfied customers, and then you kind of dredge up all of the magic, right? The good stuff about maybe why they chose you, about how you stood out, and how you were specialized, and how you were different, and especially how just we talk about the specifics, right? Someone might be specifically searching about Tesla solar panels
That's exactly
versus
right.
some other company. So we have all these specific conversations, and then someone has an SEO company like you who can then spin it off to the reels and the articles and figure out the
So
ranking
much
and figure
easier
out
to
the
spin off
metrics.
from a foundation of a series of interviews with the experts at the company,
100% garbage in, garbage out. But then if there's
Yeah.
good stuff in, then you also get
Right.
good stuff out. Yeah.
Right.
And so in these last few minutes of our
Yeah.
conversation, like we want to make sure that we prime people to reach out to you. And so when someone goes and finds you, if they go to say McDougallInteractive.com and book a 15-minute consultation, like what should somebody be prepared with going in? Like what do you wish a prospect would already have decided or already know before contacting you?
Some of their competitors, like if you give me 4 competitors and your website, I can go into SEMrush and do the keyword gap analysis and kind of blow your mind within minutes. Typically, people are pretty excited to see like, oh my God, those competitors are killing me, or one of them's doing really great, but the others suck. And then we narrow the lens through the one that's doing really good. Like, oh, look, you have 200 keywords ranking. They have 15,000. And here's their 15,000 keywords. Here are the top pages that they have on their website that are driving SEO love. Here are the pages that get shared on social media. Now it's like, whoa, I didn't know that. Like I thought SEO companies just put some keywords on there. No, sorry. If you have a 10, 20, 30 page or 100-page website, like one of our HVAC clients, we've now done over 1,300 pages for this one client in 7 or 8 years. And, they've gone up as high as $150,000 a month worth of free traffic from 15,000 keywords ranking in Google, but it doesn't come from like 5 or 10 or 20 pages, So if you don't know those things, the quickest thing to do is like, give me some of your competitors if SEO is of interest. And then we'll have a conversation that's just right into the details of where you're at and where you could be, which is the quickest path to get more leads,
Oh yeah. And it's great to think about possibilities in this way. And what I love about your mindset here, John, is that we need to think bigger, right? It's not just about like 10 or 13 pages. It's about like
Right.
hundreds of pages to capture all these searches. And if that seems overwhelming, well, there's 2 things about that. Number one, there are some competitors of yours who have no problem thinking in terms of thousands of
That's right.
pages.
So
And
too bad if it seems
yeah, so
hard.
too bad. Yeah, and then number 2, it's all the more reason to have someone else in your corner to figure some of this out. In the
That's right.
same way that if if dealing with like that dog bite and the legal process, if that seems overwhelming, you go and hire an attorney, right? If the roofing or the solar panel seems overwhelming for you, like climb a ladder, get up on there, you go to a specialist. And so likewise, if this whole idea of SEO and traffic and EEAT and of getting the search engine reach that you need to have, if you say, if I were to do it, I'd spend the next 30 years trying to figure it out, and it would change 15 ways. It's better to go to someone like John and say, hey, here are 3 or 4 of my competitors. He puts us in the tool and he says, hey, this one's just kicking your butt. Let's do something about it. And these other ones are really leaving some space open for you to dominate some of these buyer interest keywords, these local keywords. There's a lot of exciting possibilities. And especially you combine that with the 10 minutes a day podcasting, it can really like change the game as far as getting some attention in your business, staying up to date with the way that things are always changing. And so as far as you've given us so many cool ideas, John, and it's one thing to be alone in your thoughts and say, oh my gosh, I could do this or that, but then to actually get some clarity, some structure, figure out the order of importance. That's why someone needs to contact someone like you and your agency to say, okay, you got the swirl of ideas, you have like your current situation, and then now here's a plan for moving forward. And so if someone says, man, I got so excited watching, listening to this podcast with John, and I want to see how I can make this work for me, where should someone go to take that next step?
Yeah, just McDougall Interactive, or really the contact page. Just reach out, or the homepage. This calls to action to just like you said, book a quick consultation, and no strings attached. Happy to give people insights.
Very good. And I'm always impressed with podcast guests like yourself that you take the time to be on a show with me, and then when someone is interested and they go and book that free call, you're also willing to do that, because everybody wins in that way, right? Because you kind of, if someone's just that interested in raising their hand in that way, that's someone that you want to talk to, and it also helps you to think of new content ideas and everything that goes along with that. So we said that's McDougall with 2 L's interactive.com. That's McDougal interactive.com. There's a bright blue button right there to book your 15-minute consult. And that way you can stay up to date with this kind of path that the internet gods, Google, Meta, Yahoo, etc., seem to be on, where they want you to be a legitimate business, right? There's the tactics that kind of give you the quick wins now, but there's the overall strategy of building an actual web presence and answering people's questions and funneling them into your website. It's a lot to get our head around. It's a lot to think about, but that's why we need someone like John McDougall from McDougall Interactive to figure out that search and that social and that content aspect for us, whether we're in law, HVAC, roofing, home services, whatever our industry is. If you're someone that says, I see the value in SEO, but I know I need help in implementing, then John McDougall and his team are the people to talk to. So that's McDougall with 2 L's, interactive.com. And as people go there, John, it's time for the scary, difficult part of the show where I try to stump you, put you on the spot. It's where I ask you for a fun or interesting quote or lesson that has served you in life or in business. So what comes to mind for a quote or lesson?
Well, one quote is you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, right? So like, just go try it, with it's like a little kid with a computer. I have a young daughter, and she'll grab the phone and play with it and not get overly freaked out. Whereas, an 80-year-old would be like, oh my God, I wouldn't want to touch one button, So yeah, I would say, again, I've taught a lot of people how to podcast and do SEO, but I've seen an amazingly small amount of people just sign up for Riverside or Squad. I don't work for Riverside or Squadcast, but and I'm not even an affiliate. I should be, but my God, just get the tool and go for it. Because
I love it.
The alternative of like just paying for low end SEO, that's probably just splattering some keywords and some BS content, it's not going to work. It is so hard to rank in Google right now. I mean, it's brutal. You got to have all your ducks in a row. So at the very least, you need some authentic content, not just BS. That the BS stuff is just, you're throwing money away if you're doing like, cheesy, low end SEO now. Not going to work.
Right. Not going to work. We don't want that. We want to do what Wayne Gretzky says, which is you miss 100% of the shots that you don't
Wayne
take.
Gretzky,
And
exactly.
it's normal and it's natural to self-sabotage in this way, right? They call it the self-fulfilling prophecy, where if I try a tiny little bit and SEO, internet didn't work. So I was satisfied with my preconceived conclusion. But instead, we need to do what your daughter does and experiment. Click the button, see what happens.
That's right.
Give this SEO thing a real shot. Go to McDougallInteractive.com, book that 15-minute consultation, explore some possibilities, have some fun, smoke your competition, and set up the search engine optimization presence that your business deserves. That way you can enjoy some consistent traffic. So thanks, Mr. John, for just giving us all kinds of cool stories and educating us what we need to know about content and SEO. And when we go to McDougallInteractive.com, it will pay off. So I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Had a good time talking to you today.
All right.